Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Steph Zone channel. If you're joining me here for the first time, I am so excited to have you. Now, in today's video, we're going to be continuing a series that I've become really passionate about, my Sew International series. In the last video of this segment, we looked at a range of new-to-me French sewing pattern designers. We were covering lots of beautiful summer dresses, lots of architectural details, and lots and lots and lots of ruffles. Today, we're going to be scaling it back a bit, and we're going to be focusing on the Nordic countries. Now, there's actually so many designers that I wanted to showcase here that I actually need to split this video into two parts. In today's video, we're going to be talking primarily about Sweden, and in the next video, we're going to be covering a whole range of other Nordic countries. Most of the designers really appear to be in Sweden. Now, of course, the Nordic countries really have a strong position in the knitting pattern market, but I'm so excited to be showing some of their sewists some love as well. Now, I think when most of us imagine Scandi fashion, it's really easy to drop into that stereotype of kind of lots of minimalism, lots of linen, lots of beige, lots of tunics. And of course there is some of that, but there's also loads of variety just as there is anywhere else. As before, my goal today is to be really showing you designers who I think you haven't heard of yet, so please don't be offended if I miss out on any of your more popular favorites. I'll be showing you a pattern or two from each designer. I'll of course give you information about size range. Language isn't really important in this video just because most of the designers I'm talking about work in English, but I'll also give you some background on the brand where I have it. Let's get into it. First up, we have Birgitta Helmersson. Now, I'm really thrilled to be spotlighting Birgitta because her patterns are incredibly unique in the home sewing market. Specifically, she focuses on zero-waste sewing patterns, which means that you're really drawing the shapes directly onto the fabric. And then between the pieces, using the remaining scraps, that's how you're building in shaping and building in other details like pockets and like collars. Now, I'll admit, this isn't something I was super familiar with, and when I first heard about it, I kind of assumed that I was going to be seeing lots and lots of rectangles, maybe lots of gathered tiers, and that was really unfair of me. While these patterns do tend to be, I don't think boxy would be fair, probably oversized, and that's really just to make use of the full width of the fabric, they are anything but boring. Firstly, let's start with one of her more simple designs. I really like the look of her zero-waist cropped shirt. Like many of her patterns, this one comes in two size ranges. The first one is meant to be covering up to a 40-inch chest, and the second one up to a 50-inch chest. But again, there's a lot of wiggle room there just depending on the amount of ease that you want. Version 1 has a little bit of a grown-on or a cap sleeve, but you'll notice some extra gathered fabric and a longer sleeve in the second version, which is really just about, again, limiting waste. To me, this pattern really calls for something like a linen. I would really want something with a bit of body to it. But even a very lightweight viscose would work if you wanted to make this more casual. Now, if it's winter for you, like it is for me, maybe you're not ready to quite start thinking about lightweight tops. If that's the case, she actually has some great jacket patterns as well. Her standard zero waist coat is beautiful. It's an unlined wool coat that you could easily make in a kind of mid to heavyweight wool if you live somewhere cold. But you could also just make it in a cotton drill if you have slightly warmer winters than we do. However, I am particularly in love with her bell jacket. This jacket uses pleats at the back as well as at the sleeve to create this beautiful kind of rounded look in the overall jacket. Now, you could make this as a lined wool coat, you can make it as a shirt, but the version I am most interested in is actually her quilted version. She has the same Merchant & Mills quilted fabric that I have in my collection, and she uses that for her sample. And now I'm starting to feel like that jacket might have to become the new plan for that fabric. There is lots more available from her, including dresses, including trousers. I'm so curious about the trousers because I just think like, how could you possibly do that with those shapes? But I'm excited to try them. And she even has a book out that is entirely about zero waste pattern cutting that has sample blocks included in it. So would definitely recommend looking into her. Go ahead and give Birgitta a follow. I don't want to call zero waste pattern cutting new because if anything, being willing to waste so much fabric is actually what's newer historically. But I'm so excited to see something like this being taught to the home sewing market because I don't think it's something that, at least I couldn't figure it out myself. I don't know if any of you could as well. Now, if you're looking for more casual patterns, maybe you want some stretch fabrics, I still got you. Next, we have Ploen patterns. I don't hear much about Ploen in the US or the UK, but I really don't think that we should sleep on this designer. The designer behind Ploen, Josephine, is actually a full-time garment technician in her kind of day job, and I love to see a true professional in the space designing garments for the home sewing market. Not only does her background give me confidence that the fit is going to be spot on, but I would be excited to look into how she approaches construction, because I think that she would do it really in the most optimal way given her job. Ploen doesn't have a super large catalog at this stage. She's kind of releasing patterns slowly as and when she can, but the product that I wanted to spotlight is actually a pattern bundle. Josephine appears to really like her knit fabrics, and she actually sells a bundle of all of her basic knit designs at a really affordable price. The bundle contains 3 different patterns, all of which include multiple variations, so again, great bang for your buck with that. First, there is the Idun dress, and again, I should have said this up front. I'm so sorry if I'm messing up the pronunciation. I did genuinely try to look, but I'm just not good at it. But firstly, there is the Idun dress, which is a sleeveless dress, princess seam bodice, which attaches to a paneled skirt. Skirt can be made either A-line or pencil skirt, again, a few different length variations as well. Next, we have the Ira top, which is a relaxed tee. It has a boat neck, it has a drop sleeve, either a plain yoke or a tie in the back. And finally, the Jaroon leggings, which look like a very solid legging pattern. You have no side seam on these, nice high waist, wide elastic, but it doesn't look like it's squeezing or anything. And both a tapered and a flared version, so perfect for lounge, perfect for activewear. We'll talk a bit more about activewear later. The main thing though to also point out is that Ploen has a fantastic size range on these, one of the best I've seen on indie sewing patterns, particularly those based in continental Europe. She goes up to an EU 62, which is a 60-inch bust and a 65-inch hip, and we'd love to see that. There's really just a lot to love about this range. For one, just having these types of basic sewing patterns for knits is really helpful. And it's also, I think, a great introduction to start sewing with knits, because the kind of techniques you'd use to sew these garments are ones that are really widely applicable to lots of others. You could really turn this bundle into a whole set of outfits depending on how you combine them, the fabric choice. And again, I love that she's offering these so affordably. I mean, all 3 patterns together in the bundle are £20. And that is really noteworthy in a market where even basic indie sewing patterns are usually around £10 to £15 a piece. Or if they're cheaper than that, they usually require some sort of ongoing subscription. I'm so excited to see what Josephine does next, and I really think that she's going to be a very positive force in the sewing community. Now, next up we have Silver Saga patterns run by Jessica. Now, we're going to the bit of the opposite end of the spectrum from what we've talked about so far, from Birgitte's more angular shapes and oversized looks to Josephine's sporty and casual garments to some long, very romantic dresses. Jessica's patterns are actually born out of her own slow fashion line, which she's been producing since 2019. She is still releasing ready-to-wear designs, and the patterns she offers come from the best sellers in her line. Like any slow fashion line, the prices of her ready-made garments really reflect the amount of care that went into the materials, into the design, into the construction. So it's just fantastic that home sewers can access this at a slightly more accessible point for most people. Now, in terms of her patterns, I'd bet that many of you have seen her Ella dress pop up on Instagram, which is a gorgeous maxi. It has a low neckline, very full sleeves, and I've seen lots of versions of this pop up with different sews playing around with the length, the neckline, different fabrics, all to suit their needs. However, given the fact that many of you will have seen that, I do want to give some of her other designs some love because I think that they might be a bit underappreciated. First, let's start with the Cora top. This little camisole has a deep neckline, it has spaghetti straps, and I particularly like that it can tie in a bunch of different ways just because those tiny rouleau straps are actually fed through some channels on the bodice. Of course, you want something really lightweight and fluid for this. I'd probably go for like a silk satin, that would be beautiful, tencel. And even though this is designed as a top, because you have that waist seam, it would be very easy to kind of just whack on a skirt. You could add a bias skirt, you could add a gathered skirt, really sky's the limit. Now, if you do want something with a bit more coverage maybe, I think that Jessica's Mina wrap dress is also a fantastic option. There's the drop sleeve, the gathering on the sleeve as well. That's a really interesting combination. And the long ties give you lots of options as to how you want to close the dress. You also have the benefit of this very full flared wrap skirt, and that's just going to be really easy to fit. You kind of just have to worry about the bust and the shoulders, a little bit at the waist, but you get a lot of flexibility around the size range there. The dress is of course going to be pretty fabric hungry, but I think it's a great option if you do want to make something really special. Size-wise, Jessica's patterns go up to an EU 48, which is roughly a 45-inch bust and a 46 or 48-inch hip. However, again, many of those patterns have flared skirts, gathered skirts, so that's gonna make the sizing a lot more flexible, particularly at the hips. I think that for the Ella dress, the finished hip measurement in the largest size is closer to 70 inches, so again, lots of wiggle room there. I do also want to point out, again, that Jessica is very new to making patterns for the home sewing market. The Ella dress didn't come out till, I think, July 2023, and initially it was just in a very narrow size range while she was finding her feet. I think that she took a lot of, I think, unfair and kind of just like, you know how people just get on Instagram comment bandwagons and go a bit nuts. But she was really honest, she was really upfront with her desire to save up and be able to expand her range, to be able to find the right pattern grader in Sweden. And I'm happy that she stuck with it because her designs are gorgeous, but she's also preserved her style through that process. I've seen other designers kind of rush to increase their sizing. And not only do they sometimes have issues with, like, major issues with fit, and you can even see it in the modeled garments, but they suddenly are making a bunch of elastic waist pants and tunic tops, and I think, like, that's not really the same thing as being inclusive. Anyway, again, I'm happy she stuck with it. I can't wait to give more of her designs a try, and I'm excited to be able to support her as much as I can while she works on expanding her range. Now, last but certainly not least, I want to shout out Joanna Lundstrom and her brand, The Last Stitch. This is a bit of a different spotlight because instead of focusing on specific patterns here, I really want to talk about Joanna's books and her educational materials. You may have seen some of her videos pop up on YouTube before, but Joanna is a sewist with over 30 years of experience, and in particular, she's an expert at sewing activewear and using cover stitch machines. I personally own 2 of her books here. I have the sewing activewear book as well as the Master the Cover Stitch book. And I know I haven't talked much about sewing activewear on this channel before, but creating comfortable but really functional garments at home is not always easy. Even when I was sewing the vast majority of my wardrobe, activewear and specifically Lululemon, that was like the last thing that I gave up and started to make myself because I just didn't think that I could recreate those garments at home. Through her books, through her videos, through her blogs, I've actually been able to create a whole wardrobe of really gorgeous activewear that I wear all the time that I'm proud of. You don't see me going into Lululemon anymore. Her books just provide a whole range of really accessible tips, from working with different fabric types, from like slinky swim fabric to heavy merino, heavy soft shell, how to sew activewear and stretch fabrics on all sorts of machines, regular home sewing machines, overlockers / sergers, and of course the cover stitch machine. I actually invested in a cover stitch machine for the first time last year. I had never used one before, and she made the whole process of getting to know it feel really easy, really simple. It's now a machine that I use like all the time, and I feel actually really comfortable with it in a way that is primarily thanks to her materials. More recently, Joanna released a book specifically about fitting knits called Fittingly, Fit for Knits. Now, oftentimes you hear people say things like, oh, knits are easy to fit, blah, blah. And of course that's true in certain ways, like the garment stretches, it can fit a wider range of sizes, so you don't have to worry so much about specific adjustments. But I would say that I think people would be maybe a bit surprised about how much more comfortable even a basic t-shirt is, with some really simple adjustments to help it better fit their body. This new book is going to contain, I think it's already out actually, contains over 200 or 250 pages of how to approach the knit fitting process. I'm definitely going to order my copy, and I have no doubt it's going to be another great reference, just like her other books. Though my impression is that Joanna focuses on her books, she does offer patterns as well. My personal favorite right now is actually her latest pattern, which is the Ivy cardigan. This is a really elevated pattern for a knit cardigan. It has some princess seams, which I love to see. A lot of designers wouldn't bother with that. They would just do like a solid bodice piece. But those princess seams are going to offer you some great options for bust shaping. I love that you can make this really slouchy, really casual, or you could turn it into something more like an office look with a more substantial knit, maybe a ponte, maybe a wool, all the way up to like basically a lightweight jacket. If you use something like a boucle knit or a lighter weight boiled wool, you would want to make sure it still had some stretch. Still, beyond the patterns, beyond even the books, Joanna has put a huge amount of experience and advice into the sewing community over the years. All of it's available for free. So I highly, highly recommend you check her out if sewing knits or sewing activewear is something that you're interested in. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video and found it useful. As always, I would love to know if you've ever made any patterns from some of the designers that I've mentioned, and if you haven't, which of them most appeal. I am so excited to continue this series in the coming weeks, the coming months. I actually have like 4 or 5 partially finished scripts for it, just because it takes time to look into all these designers and try and put together a good amount of variety for each market. That will include a part 2 of course, the Nordic countries moving beyond Sweden. I'll probably need to do a part 2 for France just because I found so many more, but do not worry, we are not only going to focus on Europe. To make sure you stay in the loop though, definitely hit the subscribe button. But if you do want to hear more from me as well, feel free to give me a follow over on Instagram where I'm at the same handle, just Steph Sim. Have a wonderful rest of your week, and I'll be back next week with another video. Bye!